Hi guys, welcome back to another webinar. We will continue our critical reasoning crusade today and we will discuss some useful to evaluate questions. Now, they are considered one of the toughest questions in the verbal section, but I think that this reputation is not well deserved. I don't think they are very difficult, especially if you understand some key basics of this question type. Now, to be fair, I don't think any of the critical reasoning questions are really difficult. Sometimes reading comprehension questions can get out there, but then let's not digress today. We'll stick to useful to evaluate questions for today. Now, before we start, let me just give you a brief intro of the basic points that I want you to remember to keep in mind, and then the questions will go a lot easier. Yeah. So let's say consider a situation. You'll usually be given, let's say, a problem. For example, the incidence of malaria has increased a whole lot in a certain neighborhood. And then, of course, there are lots of different solutions in which you can solve this problem, right? Now, one of these solutions that is being proposed is, say, that you can spray the areas, right? Spray for 10 days every day, let's say, and that it's a mosquito killing spray, whatever it is. So if you spray the area, then the population of mosquitoes will go down, and then malaria will be controlled. So this is one of the solutions being proposed. Now, your job is to evaluate whether this solution works for the aim that is given to you. Now, sometimes the aim or the target of the plan may not be specifically mentioned. So here, in case it's, you just asked, okay, so evaluate what will be useful to evaluate whether, spraying the surroundings, whatever, is going to achieve its aim. Your obvious aim over here is to reduce the incidence of malaria, because the problem is that the incidence of malaria has increased a lot, right? But quite often the aim will be specifically mentioned, and at that time we have to keep that aim in mind. So for example, you could be asked, which of the following options will be useful to evaluate whether this plan will help in reducing the incidence of malaria. And why I say that, you just hold on to that thought, I'll tell you. So let's say this is the question given to you, and then imagine that there is this group of people, right? A small team. Think of corporate setting, a closed small team. They have to evaluate whether this plan will achieve its aim, whether it will reduce the incidence of malaria or not, right? Now, they don't have to worry about any other plan. If there is another proposal, if malaria could be reduced by something else as well, then let some other team worry about it, right? Your team only has to worry about whether the spray will help achieve the aim or not. Okay. Now, for example, there is this question, will the spray cause any other side effects? Unfortunately, you don't have to worry about that either, because your job is only to worry about whether the spray will achieve its aim or not. And the aim over here is to reduce the incidence of malaria, whatever else it may cause. Again, think of a corporate setting, that this is your role. Someone else will worry about what else the spray can cause, right? That is, you only have to focus on one thing. Will the plan achieve its aim? That's all. And that is what you have to evaluate, right? All right. Now, why did I say that the aim will be normally given to you? It will be mentioned in so many words. Because, for example, now, what if the question says, okay, what will be useful to evaluate whether spraying the surroundings is a good idea to increase the overall health of that particular neighborhood, or to improve, basically, improve the overall health of that particular neighborhood? Now what? Now, whether the spray can cause some other serious side effects or not is something you do have to take into consideration, right? So that is why I say that you have to be very clear about what the plan is and about what the aim is. And the only thing you have to worry about is whether that particular plan will achieve that particular given aim or not. Aim could be reduce the incidence of malaria, then you don't worry about whether there can be some other consequences of the spray, etc. But if the aim is to improve the overall health of the people, then you do have to worry about the other consequences as well, right? Then it becomes relevant to us, then it becomes useful to evaluate, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to figure out what the problem is, then we are going to figure out what the proposed plan is, and then we're going to figure out what the aim is. And then we will keep a very narrow focus. We are one small team. This is all we have to evaluate. Another team will evaluate everything else, right? We only have to evaluate whether this given plan is going to achieve this aim that is provided to us. Is that good? All right. Now, as long as you keep this in mind, most of the questions will get resolved very easily. Now, you do have that yes no strategy that is used often in evaluate questions. I think it does waste a whole lot of time, but it is useful to ensure that you've got the right answer by applying that strategy, but only on the option which you're about to mark, which seems reasonable, which seems like the answer. Just apply over there, think of answering that particular question in two different ways and see if it affects your conclusion differently, right? So we'll try it out. Let's start with our first question for today. So in a certain wildlife park, park rangers are able to track the movements of many rhinoceroses because those animals wear radio collars. So there are some kind of collars that they are made to wear, and then they can track the movements. When, as often happens, a collar slips off, it is put back on. Putting a collar on a rhinoceros involves immobilizing the animal by shooting it with a tranquilizer dart. All right. So then, if the collar comes off, it has to be put back. So now, for that, the animal has to be shot first, has to be given a tranquilizer dart. So then, the animal is immobilized, and then the collar is put back on. All right. Now, female rhinoceroses that have been frequently recollared have significantly lower fertility rates than uncollared females. Now, this is the problem that we're talking about. That the rhinoceroses that have been frequently recollared, where often the collar has fallen off and then they have been shot with the dart and then again recollared, they have lower fertility rates than uncollared females, than females who don't have a collar at all, right? We're not talking about let's say other females who've not been recollared very frequently or whatever. Let's be very, very clear about what two things we are talking about. We are saying the ones who have been recollared very frequently versus uncollared females, right? Okay, probably therefore some substance in the tranquilizer inhibits fertility. So then they're saying that there must be some substance in the tranquilizer that is inhibiting the fertility. Now, this is the hypothesis that is given to us. There could be various reasons for the problem, right? Why the frequently recollared females have lower fertility than the uncollared females. There could be various reasons, but then our hypothesis over here is that it has to be some substance in the dart, in the tranquilizer, which inhibits fertility. Now we have to, in evaluating the argument, we need to evaluate this particular argument, this particular hypothesis is what we need to evaluate, whether this is the reason for the lower fertility of frequently recollared females. Okay. So in evaluating the argument, it would be most useful to determine which of the following. And now we look at the options. So A, whether there are more collared female rhinoceroses than uncollared female rhinoceroses in the pool. Now, does that matter? The number of collared versus number of uncollared, it doesn't matter. We are just talking about the fertility rate. So then, we would be comparing, let's say, 100 collared females with 100 uncollared females. Total, how many collared or how many uncollared there are, it doesn't matter to us, right? So this is certainly not useful to evaluate. This is not correct. Now, if you do want to use your yes, no test over here, okay, let's say if there are more collared female rhinoceroses, let's say there are 100 of them are collared and let's say only 50 of them are uncollared, does it change anything? We are not talking about the number of females who, let's say, bore babies, whatever, right? We're not talking about the absolute numbers. We're only talking about the, look at this, fertility rates. Now, when we talk about rates, that means that the fertility rate of, let's say, 10% or 20%, it is going to be in terms of, let's say, percentages, isn't it? It will not be an absolute number. So then the absolute number of the rhinoceroses doesn't really matter. If it were flipped, for example, we had 50 collared and 100 uncollared ones, again, it wouldn't matter. So we know that this option is. Okay, look at B. How the tranquilizer that is used for immobilizing rhinoceroses differs, if at all, from tranquilizers used in working with other large animals. Again, our focus has to be absolutely sharp. The tranquilizers used for other large animals, whether this tranquilizer it is different or it is the same, it does not matter. Okay, we don't care about it. Look, it is possible that the fertility rates suffer, the other large animals also suffer from lower fertility rate. It could be that, the tranquilizer are almost the same, or if, or maybe it does differ, and maybe that difference could be causing the lower fertility rate. That difference may not be causing a lower fertility. We don't know anything. We don't, look, pretty much we don't care about any of the other large mammals. Our scope is defined. We have to talk about this only. So then this is also not correct. Okay. Now look at C. How often park rangers need to use tranquilizer darts to immobilize rhinoceroses for reasons other than attaching radio collars? Now, all right. So the point over here is they are asking, is it useful to evaluate whether, the tranquilizer is used for other purposes also? Now think about it. Why is this useful to evaluate? Here we can use the yes no test because it seems to be relevant. All right, so now think about it. What if the tranquilizer darts are used every time a rhinoceros is given food or medicine? Maybe, let's say, 4 times in a day, right? And recoloring is done, let's say, once in a week. Does it matter if every rhinoceros gets a dart 4 times a day and recoloring is, let's say, done once in a week only? And in any case, that rhinoceros is also getting the dart 4 times in a day. Then does it matter that the frequently recolored ones have a lower fertility rate? Then is the tranquilizer responsible for it? Doesn't seem to be, right? Anyway, in case it is getting done, let's say, about 30 times in a week. Now 30 or 31, it's no different. If a uncollared rhinoceros gets a tranquilizer, let's say, 30 times in a week, and a collared one gets it 31 times in a week, is there any difference as such? There isn't any. In fact, sometimes maybe one of the rhinoceros has to be given more medicine, then this number could easily be 29 or 32 or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? The difference is insignificant in that case. That once that you have to give the dart again, in case of recoloring, that is kind of insignificant. But on the other hand, let's say, what if you do not need to give a tranquilizer to a rhinoceros who doesn't have a collar? You just don't have to give it. And the other rhinoceroses who do have collars, they need to be recollared, let's say, once every week. Then what happens? Now it makes sense. Now this does become relevant. Now it does look that it could be something to do with the tranquilizer, because these people are not given the tranquilizer at all, and these people are given the tranquilizer much more frequently than them. Right? So then tranquilizer could be the differentiating factor in this case. So this is useful to evaluate. Look, it will not establish whether it is a problem in the tranquilizer, right? It is only useful to evaluate. It will help us get more data, right? This is certainly useful to evaluate. All right. So we'll hold on to this. Go to D. Whether male rhinoceroses in the wildlife park lose their collars any more often than the park's female rhinoceroses do. All right. Now, male rhinoceroses versus the female rhinoceroses, is that what we are discussing? Please ensure again that our focus is very clear. What are we talking about? The frequently recollared females versus the uncollared. females, right? We're talking only about the female rhinoceroses that have been frequently recollared. They have significantly lower fertility rates than uncollared females. So we are only discussing these females versus these females. So the male rhinoceroses are out of scope for us. We don't have to compare with them at all. All right. Now, E. Whether radio collars are the only practical means that park rangers have for tracking the movements of rhinoceroses in the park. As we said, any other plan is absolutely useless. It is something we don't have to worry about. Anyway, this is not even another plan, right? This is just, we are discussing the tranquilizer dart. We are saying that that is the one that is responsible. Here, they are wondering whether there can be other ways in which rhinoceroses can be tracked. So they are talking about radio collars, right? So this is certainly, not in our scope. This is certainly out of scope for us. Okay. So then the answer is simply going to be C. C is the correct one, right? Now this is, look, we are going to take some of the popular questions today, the ones in which people find a lot of problems. So you may even know the answer to quite a few of these questions. It doesn't matter. Our point is to understand how to think through. Right? Our point is to understand that which point, which word in which option tells us that this option needs to be ignored. It doesn't need to be evaluated any further, right? That thought process is the point of this discussion. All right. Okay.